The silver towers of Lumerus gleamed under the light of 3 moons. Once, they had stood as symbols of peace and advancement. Now, they served only as targets for the Void Hunters. Fleet Admiral Trell stood before the command center's wide viewing screen, his 4-fingered hands clasped tightly behind his back. The blue skin around his large eyes had darkened with exhaustion. For 6 rotations, he had barely rested. "Status report," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding before him. Officer Wren looked up from her console, the light reflecting off her smooth, pale face. "The outer shield has fallen. Admiral, sectors 7 through 12 are overrun. The evacuation ships—" She paused, her voice breaking. "Only 3 made it past the blockade." Trell closed his eyes briefly. 3 ships, perhaps 1,000 survivors out of millions. And our fighters? Less than 30 remain operational, sir. Around them, the command center buzzed with desperate activity. Technicians called out reports while military officers directed what little remained of their defense forces. The air smelled of burned circuits and fear. Elder Mora entered the room, leaning heavily on her walking staff. Despite being the oldest member of the council, she moved with purpose, her long robes sweeping the floor. The markings on her face, symbols of wisdom acquired through centuries, seemed to glow in the dim light. "Trell," she said, "we must speak." Her voice carried the weight of authority that silenced the room. Trell nodded and followed her to a small meeting chamber off the main control room. When the door slid shut, Elder Mora turned to him with an intensity that made her seem younger. "Our defenses will not hold another day," she said. "You know this." "I do," Trell admitted. "But surrender is not an option. The Void Hunters do not take prisoners." "No," she agreed. "They consume worlds. We've seen what happened to the Galorn system, to the Plex colonies." She placed a data crystal on the table between them. "Which is why I am proposing something forbidden." Trell looked at the crystal with suspicion. "Explain." "Our ancient texts speak of a weapon, a force so unstable, so dangerous, that the Galactic Union quarantined its entire world 10,000 years ago." Trell's eyes widened with understanding. "You can't possibly mean—" "A human," Elder Mora said simply. "Yes." The word hung in the air like a dangerous spark. Humans were not discussed in polite society. Their world, Earth, had been sealed off from the rest of the galaxy by mutual agreement of all advanced species. "That's impossible," Trell said. "The dimensional barriers around Earth cannot be breached." "They can," Mora corrected him, "with the right technology and the right ritual." She activated the crystal, and ancient schematics filled the air between them. "Our ancestors feared humans' unpredictability, their violence, but they also respected their potential. They left us a way to call upon them if our need was dire enough." "What you're suggesting violates every treaty we've signed," Trell protested, though without much conviction. What did treaties matter when their world stood on the brink of extinction? "The texts also say something else," Mora continued. "The Void Hunters fear only one thing in all the galaxy. They fear humans." Outside, an explosion shook the building. The lights flickered. From the command center came shouts of alarm. "We're out of time, Trell," Mora said. "We need to decide." Trell stared at the schematics, his mind racing. The risk was enormous. Humans were unpredictable, driven by emotions rather than logic. They could be as destructive as the Void Hunters themselves. But they were also, according to legend, fierce protectors when they chose to be. How would it work? He finally asked. "The ritual requires 3 components," Mora explained. "The ancient summoning device, which I've kept hidden in the temple archives. A genetic beacon, which will target a specific human with compatible markers. And a power source strong enough to break through the dimensional barrier. Our main reactor." "No," Mora shook her head. "It must be biological energy, life force." Trell's already blue skin paled further. "A sacrifice, not death," Mora clarified. But pain, voluntary pain. The ritual requires 3 Lumari to channel their suffering into energy. Another explosion, closer this time. The floor trembled beneath their feet. How long would the process take? Trell asked. 4 hours to prepare, minutes to execute. Trell made his decision. Do it. I'll authorize whatever you need. He paused. And I volunteer as one of the 3. Mora nodded, unsurprised. I expected nothing less. 3 hours later, deep beneath the central citadel, Officer Wren helped Elder Mora prepare the ancient chamber for the ritual. The room was circular, with strange symbols carved into stone walls that predated their civilization. In the center stood a platform with 3 kneeling positions arranged in a triangle. Wren placed the summoning device, a crystalline object shaped like a double helix, in the center of the triangle. Will this really work? She asked quietly. If the old stories are true, Mora replied, the human will appear within this circle. She pointed to a larger ring surrounding the triangle. And then, we hope. Hope that the human helps us, or hope that we can control it. Mora gave Wren a sharp look. We will not control a human. We can only ask for help. Trell entered the chamber, accompanied by Commander Lev, a battle-hardened veteran who would serve as the 3rd participant in the ritual. Both had changed into simple white robes. Status above. Mora asked. The inner shields are failing, Trell reported. We have perhaps 2 hours before they breach the citadel. Then we begin now, Mora said. She turned to Wren. You've studied the texts. You will guide us. Wren nodded nervously. This responsibility should have fallen to someone older, wiser, but she was the only one who had mastered the ancient language of the ritual. The 3 participants, Trell, Mora, and Lev, took their positions on the kneeling stones. Wren activated the genetic beacon, which hummed with blue energy as it scanned billions of humans across time and space, searching for one with the right genetic markers. It's found someone, Wren reported, reading the strange symbols that appeared in the air. A fighter, a protector. Begin the ritual, Mora instructed. Wren started chanting in the ancient tongue, words that felt strange in her mouth. The 3 participants joined in, their voices rising and falling in eerie harmony. The summoning device began to glow. Then came the pain. All 3 gasped as energy began draining from their bodies. It wasn't fatal, as Mora had promised, but it was agonizing, like having one's essence slowly extracted. Their suffering converted into pure energy that fed the summoning device. The air in the center of the room began to distort. A sphere of light formed, growing larger, brighter. The chamber filled with the smell of ozone and something else, something alien. Wren continued the chant, though her voice shook with fear and wonder. The sphere of light pulsed, expanded, then collapsed with a thunderous crack. Where nothing had been moments before, a figure now knelt on one knee. A human male, tall and muscular by their standards. He wore strange clothing, some kind of thick blue fabric on his legs, a green upper garment with words they couldn't read. His skin was tanned, his face marked with small scars. In one hand, he held a strange metal object that Wren recognized from ancient texts as a weapon. The human raised his head, revealing eyes that narrowed with confusion and alarm. His gaze swept the room, taking in the alien faces, the strange technology. His grip tightened on his weapon. In that moment, Wren understood why the Void Hunters feared humans. There was something primal in those eyes, something dangerous. The human spoke, his deep voice echoing in the chamber. Though none of them had heard the language before, the summoning ritual provided translation. Where the hell am I? And who are you people? Trell, exhausted from the ritual but still dignified, rose slowly to his feet. I am Fleet Admiral Trell of Lumerus. We have summoned you because our world faces extinction. He gestured to the viewing screen on the wall, which showed the Void Hunters' ships descending through the atmosphere. Those are our enemies, the Void Hunters, and you. My name is Jack, the human interrupted, rising to his full height. Jack Stone. Above them, the citadel shook as another barrage hit the shields. Dust fell from the ancient ceiling. What do you want from me? Jack asked, his voice level but tense. Elder Morris stepped forward, her eyes meeting his without fear. The legends say your kind once fought the Void Hunters, that they fear you above all others in the galaxy. Jack looked at the screen again, studying the black ships with their distinctive angular designs. Something flickered across his face. Recognition. Memory. I've never seen those ships before in my life, he said. But I know a bad situation when I see one. He checked his weapon with practiced ease. So tell me everything, and make it quick. Hope, fragile but real, blossomed in Ren's chest for the first time in days. Perhaps, just perhaps, they might survive after all. Jack Stone had been enjoying a quiet evening at his cabin when the world dissolved around him. One moment, he was cleaning his service pistol, a habit he'd kept since leaving the military. And the next, he was kneeling in a strange chamber surrounded by blue-skinned aliens. Now he stood with his back against a wall, weapon half-raised, studying the creatures who had pulled him across space. They looked almost like tall, slender humans with large eyes and smooth, hairless skin in various shades of blue. Their expressions seemed easy enough to read. Fear, hope, desperation. Let me get this straight, Jack said, keeping his voice calm. You pulled me across the galaxy because some ancient book said humans might be able to help against these Void Hunters. Admiral Trell nodded. Our most sacred texts speak of humans. Your species was quarantined long ago because of your unpredictable nature. Unpredictable, Jack repeated. That's a nice way of saying dangerous, isn't it? Elder Morris stepped forward. The stories say humans are capable of great violence, yes, but also great compassion, great ingenuity in times of crisis. The building shook again. Dust rained from the ceiling. We're out of time, Officer Ren said, checking a device on her wrist. The inner shields are collapsing. Jack holstered his weapon and ran a hand through his short brown hair. Look, I sympathize with your situation, but I'm just one man. I can't fight off an alien invasion single-handed. We're not asking you to fight alone, Trell said. Only to help us fight better. To teach us. Jack laughed, though there was no humor in it. Teach you. I was just a soldier, not a general. Before anyone could respond, a loud alarm blared through the chamber. Red lights flashed along the walls. They've breached the West Wing, Ren reported, her voice tight with fear. Trell turned to Jack. Will you help us? Please. Jack looked at their faces, alien, yet showing emotions he understood all too well. Fear, hope, determination. He'd seen those same expressions on human faces in war zones across Earth. I need to understand what we're up against, he said finally. Show me these Void Hunters. The answer came sooner than expected. As Trell led Jack and the others through a corridor heading toward the command center, a section of wall ahead of them exploded inward. Through the smoke and debris came three figures that made Jack stop in his tracks. The Void Hunters stood nearly 7 feet tall, their bodies covered in what looked like black armor, but moved like liquid. Where faces should be, they had only smooth, featureless helmets with a single glowing red line across the front. They moved with unnatural grace, seemed to flow rather than walk. Back, Jack shouted, pushing Ren behind him. He drew his pistol and fired 3 rapid shots. The bullet struck the lead hunter in the chest. It staggered momentarily, then continued forward. Conventional weapons barely slow them, Trell explained, drawing a sleek device that Jack assumed was some kind of energy weapon. The Lumeri soldiers with them opened fire with similar weapons. Beams of blue energy struck the hunters, creating momentary ripples in their liquid-like armor, but doing little damage. Jack assessed the situation with the quick clarity that had kept him alive through 3 war zones. The corridor was narrow, an advantage against superior numbers. The hunters moved confidently, suggesting they were used to facing enemies who fled rather than fought. "Give me one of those," Jack demanded, pointing to Trell's weapon. Trell hesitated only a second before handing it over. "Press here to fire. The intensity increases the longer you hold." Jack nodded. "Fall back to that junction we passed. Create a crossfire when I give the signal." The Lumeri looked uncertain but followed his orders. Jack remained in place, studying the approaching hunters. Their movements reminded him of predators, confident, measured, without fear. When the hunters were 20 feet away, Jack fired a short burst from the energy weapon at the ceiling above them. The beam carved through the material, sending a shower of debris down on the hunters. They paused, looking up. A mistake. "Now," Jack shouted, from both sides of the junction behind him. The Lumari opened fire. Caught in a crossfire, and with their attention divided, the hunters suddenly seemed less confident. One went down, its armor rippling violently before going still. Jack fired again, not at the hunters but at the floor beneath them. The energy beam cut through the material, creating a hole. One hunter fell through before the others could react. "Keep firing," Jack ordered, diving forward into a roll that brought him closer to the remaining hunter. The alien was fast, turning to face this new threat. But Jack was already inside its reach. He slammed the butt of the energy weapon into the red line on its helmet. The hunter reeled back, and Jack fired point-blank into the same spot. The hunter collapsed, its armor turning from glossy black to dull gray. Silence fell in the corridor. Jack turned to see the Lumeri staring at him, with expressions ranging from shock to awe. "How?" Ren began. "How did you know to target the sensor line?" Jack shrugged. "Educated guess. It was the only distinctive feature." He examined the fallen hunter with professional curiosity. "These things aren't invincible. They're just used to enemies who panic." Trell stepped forward, looking at Jack with new respect. "In 6 rotations of fighting, we've never taken down 3 hunters with no casualties." "Well, don't celebrate yet," Jack said. "There are probably more coming." He gestured at the fallen hunter. "Tell me everything you know about these things while we move." In the command center, Jack studied the tactical displays showing the Void Hunters' positions throughout the Citadel. What he saw wasn't good. The aliens had penetrated multiple levels and were methodically working their way toward the central power core. If they reach the core, Engineer Tom explained, they can trigger a collapse that will destroy this entire continent. Tom was older than the other Lumari, with dark blue skin and hands that showed the marks of someone who worked with machinery. Jack nodded, taking in the information. "They're not just killing. They're consuming resources." "Yes," Elder Mora confirmed. "The Void Hunters strip planets of all valuable elements. They leave nothing but barren rock." Jack had seen enough war to recognize patterns. "Show me your victories, not your losses. Has any defense worked against them, even temporarily?" Trell and Tom exchanged glances. "We managed to trap a small group in the Eastern Research Wing by overloading a power conduit," Tom said. "The electromagnetic pulse disrupted their communication temporarily." "Good," Jack said. "What else?" "Nothing," Trell admitted, "until today when you defeated those 3. Jack paced the room, thinking. These aliens had the Lumeri completely outmatched in conventional warfare, but unconventional tactics might work. "I'll help you," he said finally, "on one condition." "Name it," Trell replied instantly. "When this is over, you send me home." A strange silence fell over the room. The Lumeri looked at each other uncomfortably. "What?" Jack demanded. Elder Mora stepped forward, her ancient face solemn. "There is something you should know, Jack Stone. According to our temporal scans, on your Earth, you disappeared 3 years ago. Presumed dead." Jack felt cold. "That's impossible. I was just at my cabin." "The summoning ritual can reach across time, as well as space," Mora explained gently. "We didn't know this would happen. So send me back to before I disappeared," Jack insisted. Mora shook her head sadly. The ritual cannot be precisely controlled that way. And there is more. She hesitated, then continued. Our long-range scans show that Earth was destroyed 50 of your years after your time. A natural disaster. An asteroid impact that your people failed to detect in time. Jack stared at her, looking for any sign of deception. Finding none, he turned away, his hands clenched into fists. So I have nothing to go back to, he said quietly. No home. No Earth. You have us, Ren said unexpectedly. If you help us survive. Jack turned back to face them, his expression hardening into resolve. Then we better make sure you do survive. Show me your weapons, your defenses, everything you've got. We're going to teach these void hunters what happens when they corner a human. In the distance, the sound of more explosions echoed through the citadel. The hunters were coming. But for the first time since the invasion began, the Lumari felt something new taking root alongside their fear. No, you're still thinking like prey, Jack said, his voice echoing through the training chamber. 20 Lumari soldiers stood before him, their expressions a mixture of confusion and frustration. They had been practicing for hours, and progress was slow. We're not warriors by nature, Commander Lev explained, wiping sweat from his blue brow. Our species evolved as builders and thinkers. Jack nodded. I understand. But right now, you need to be fighters. He picked up one of their energy weapons. You've been using these like defensive tools, keeping your distance. The Void Hunters expect that. They count on it. He demonstrated a different stance, more aggressive. Get closer. Aim for their sensor bands. Move unpredictably. He performed a rolling dive that ended with him in a kneeling position, weapon raised. Like this. The Lumari tried to copy his movements, some more successfully than others. Officer Ren, to Jack's surprise, adapted quickest. Her slender form moved with unexpected grace as she rolled and came up firing at the practice target. Good, Jack called out. Everyone, watch Ren's form. Ren's skin darkened slightly, their equivalent of a blush, Jack had learned. As the training continued, Engineer Tom entered the chamber, carrying a modified weapon. The older Lumari had taken an immediate interest in Jack's tactical suggestions and had been working to adapt their technology. I've reconfigured the pulse rifles as you suggested, Tom said, handing the weapon to Jack. It should now deliver a concentrated electromagnetic burst on the secondary setting. Jack examined the weapon, nodding with approval. If their communication is vulnerable to EM disruption, this might give us an edge. He looked at Tom with respect. You work fast. I've had practice, Tom replied with a hint of pride. Before the invasion, I was lead engineer on our deep space initiative. Jack tested the weapon's weight and balance. Let's hope we all live long enough for you to get back to that work. A soft alert chimed from Ren's wrist device. She checked it and looked up with alarm. Admiral Trell is calling an emergency meeting. The Void Hunters are moving again. In the command center, Admiral Trell stood before a holographic display of the city. Large sections glowed red, indicating hunter-controlled territory. But for the first time, there were also blue sections pushing back against the red. Their advance has slowed, Trell announced as Jack and the others entered. The traps you designed at these 3 junctions have been effective. He pointed to areas where the blue had reclaimed ground from the red. Jack studied the map carefully. They're adapting, though. See how they're changing their approach pattern here and here. He pointed to 2 sectors. They're learning. Yes, Elder Mora agreed, her ancient eyes troubled. But so are we, thanks to you. Over the past 5 days, Jack had worked with the Lumari to completely overhaul their defense strategy. Gone were the static defensive lines that the Void Hunters easily overwhelmed. In their place, Jack had implemented guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run attacks, traps, and ambushes. What about the deep scan results? Jack asked. Tom activated a different display, showing the interior structure of a Void Hunter. We finally got clear readings from the specimens you helped us capture. Their armor isn't armor at all. It's part of them. A semi-liquid exoskeleton controlled by this central node. He pointed to a glowing point near where a human's heart would be. Their weakness, Jack said. If we can disrupt that node, we might be able to disable them without destroying them, Tom finished. I've been modifying our weapons accordingly. Jack nodded, impressed with how quickly the Lumari adapted once shown a different way of thinking. They weren't warriors, but they were incredibly quick learners. We're ready to move to Phase 2, Jack announced. It's time to take the fight to them. The small team moved silently through the maintenance tunnels beneath the western sector of the Citadel. Jack led the way, with Ren close behind. 4 of the best soldiers from the training sessions followed, along with Tom, who carried a backpack full of modified equipment. The Hunter command ship landed here, Ren whispered, projecting a small hologram from her wrist device. Our scans show approximately 50 Hunters inside, including what might be their leader. Jack peered through a grating in the ceiling of the tunnel. Above, he could see the massive black shape of the Void Hunter vessel. It resembled a giant manta ray made of liquid metal, settled in what had once been a public plaza. Remember the plan, Jack said quietly. We're not trying to destroy the ship. We want to plant Tom's device on their central communication array. If it works, it will work, Tom interrupted with quiet confidence. When it works, Jack corrected with a small smile, it should disrupt their coordination across the entire city. They continued forward until they reached the access point directly beneath the ship. Jack checked his weapons, the modified pulse rifle, and a smaller sidearm Tom had created specifically for targeting the Hunter's central nodes. Ready? He asked, looking at each team member. They nodded, their faces showing determination despite their fear. Jack felt a surge of pride. These weren't soldiers. Just a week ago, they had been scientists, engineers, and administrators. Now they were warriors. Let's go. Commander Drek stood on the bridge of his command vessel, reviewing the battle data. Something had changed in the Lumari defense patterns. They were no longer predictable, no longer easy prey. They were fighting differently. Analysis complete, reported the Hunter beside him. Like all Void Hunters, it communicated through a combination of subsonic vibrations and neural links. Unusual combat patterns detected in sectors 7, 12, and 15. Tactics do not match known Lumari strategies. Drek moved to the central view screen, his liquid armor rippling with agitation. Show me. The screen displayed footage of recent encounters. Drek watched as Lumari fighters used cover, flanking maneuvers, and coordinated attacks to overwhelm his Hunters. This was wrong. The Lumari were builders, thinkers, not fighters. They lacked the instinct for combat. These are not Lumari tactics, Drek concluded. Someone else is directing them. An alarm suddenly blared through the ship. Intruder alert, announced the ship's system. Lower hull breach detected. Drek felt something unfamiliar, a sensation that made his armor ripple involuntarily. Was it fear? Secure the communication array, he ordered. Deploy all available units. The inside of the Hunter ship was like nothing Jack had ever seen. The walls seemed alive, pulsing with dark energy. The corridors twisted in ways that defied normal architecture, as if the ship itself was a living organism. This way, Tom whispered, following readings on his device. The communication array should be through that chamber. They had encountered only minimal resistance so far. 2 Hunter guards that they had managed to disable with the modified weapons. The electromagnetic pulses had disrupted the creature's central nodes, causing their liquid armor to harden and crack. As they approached the central chamber, however, Jack felt a familiar prickling at the back of his neck. The feeling that had saved his life many times in combat. Wait, he said, holding up his hand. It's too easy. The words had barely left his mouth when the walls around them seemed to come alive. What they had thought were just strange architectural features suddenly shifted and moved, revealing hidden Hunters. Ambush, Jack shouted, firing his weapon. Fall back to position 2. The team responded instantly, forming a defensive circle and retreating toward their secondary route. The hunters closed in, their liquid armor rippling with what almost looked like excitement. Jack fired continuously, targeting the sensor bands on the hunters' helmets. Beside him, Ren moved with surprising agility, her shots precise and effective. 2 hunters fell, their armor hardening into brittle shells. "Tom," Jack called out. "The device." The engineer was already working, his fingers flying over the small device he had brought. "I need 30 seconds to calibrate it for remote detonation." "You've got 15, Jack replied, taking down another hunter. The battle intensified. One of the Lumari soldiers fell, a hunter's blade-like appendage cutting through his shoulder. Jack grabbed the wounded soldier and pulled him back as Ren covered them. "Done," Tom announced, holding up the device. "Throw it," Jack ordered. "Aim for the center of that structure." Tom hurled the device toward what appeared to be a pulsing black orb suspended from the ceiling of the chamber. The moment it connected, he activated a control on his wrist. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The device emitted a powerful electromagnetic pulse that spread through the ship's systems. The hunters closest to it froze in place, their armor hardening. The lights in the ship flickered and died. "Now we run," Jack said, helping the wounded soldier to his feet, "before their backup systems activate." They retreated the way they had come, moving quickly through the suddenly dark corridors. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of hunters in disarray, no longer coordinated, no longer functioning as a perfect unit. As they emerged from beneath the ship, Jack looked back. The massive vessel's surface was rippling strangely, as if in pain. "Did it work?" Ren asked, breathing hard. Jack's wrist communicator buzzed. Admiral Trull's voice came through, filled with amazement. "Whatever you did, it worked. The hunters throughout the city are disorganized. Some have completely shut down." A fierce smile spread across Jack's face as he looked at his team. Phase 2 complete. Now for Phase 3. For the first time since the invasion began, victory seemed possible. The Void Hunters had never faced a human before. They were learning, too late, why humans had been quarantined from the rest of the galaxy. Not because humans were weak, but because they were too dangerous to be allowed to roam free. Commander Drek stood in the remains of what had once been his pristine command center. The walls, normally smooth and responsive to his thoughts, were cracked and dull. Half the systems remained offline despite 3 days of repair efforts. "Status report," he demanded, his voice carrying unusual harmonics of stress. 73% of our forces have re-established neural link, reported his second-in-command. 22% remain in recovery stasis. 5% were terminated. Drek's armor rippled with rage. Never in his 300 cycles of conquest had any species managed to destroy Void Hunters. Damage them, yes. Delay them, certainly. But destroy them? Unthinkable. And what of the anomaly? Have we identified it? The second-in-command's armor darkened slightly, a sign of discomfort. The pattern matches historical records. The energy signature is unmistakable. A pause. "It's a human." The word hung in the air like a poison. Drek's entire form shuddered involuntarily. "Impossible," he said, though he knew it wasn't. They were contained, quarantined. The Lumari found a way to breach the barrier. Our deep scans confirm it. Drek moved to the viewing screen, watching footage of recent battles. There, leading a squad of Lumari through the eastern sector, was a creature unlike any other. It moved differently, fought differently. Its tactics were unpredictable, adaptive. "Deploy the Omega Protocol," Drek ordered. His second-in-command's armor paled with shock. "But, Commander, the Omega Protocol has never been." "Do it," Drek interrupted. "We will not allow a human to remain free in this galaxy. Not again." Jack stood on a balcony overlooking the city of Lumeris. From this height, he could see both the beauty of the alien architecture and the devastation the invasion had caused. Entire districts lay in ruins, while others glowed with the blue energy shields the defenders had managed to restore. "Quite a view," said a voice behind him. Jack turned to see Elder Mora, leaning on her staff. Over the past week, he had come to respect the ancient Lumari's wisdom and quiet strength. "I grew up in mountains not unlike these," Jack said, gesturing to the peaks that surrounded the city. "Different color, though. Ours were more brown and green." "Do you miss your world?" Mora asked. Jack considered the question. "Yes and no. I miss what it was. The good parts, anyway." He paused. "But I was alone there. A relic of wars everyone wanted to forget." Mora nodded, understanding. "And here I'm useful again." Jack smiled slightly. "Though I never expected to be useful to blue aliens fighting liquid space monsters." Mora chuckled, a sound like gentle bells. "Life rarely follows our expectations." Her expression grew serious. "The Council wishes to meet with you. They've received reports from other Lumari colonies. Your tactics have been successful elsewhere too." Jack nodded. Since the attack on the command ship, they had transmitted his strategies to the remaining Lumari outposts. The tide was turning, slowly but surely. "There's something else," Mora added. "Our deep scans have detected unusual energy signatures from the Void Hunters' main fleet. They're preparing something different. They're adapting," Jack said, unsurprised. "That's what good enemies do." The council chamber was a circular room with 13 seats arranged in a tiered semicircle. Jack stood in the center, feeling somewhat awkward as the focus of so many alien gazes. Admiral Trell, now serving as acting council leader, opened the session. "First, we wish to formally thank Jack Stone for his service to Lumaris. Because of his guidance, we have reclaimed 27% of our occupied territory." Polite applause followed. Jack nodded in acknowledgement. "However," Trell continued, "we now face a new threat. Our long-range scanners have detected a massive energy buildup in the Void Hunters' mothership, which remains in orbit. Science Officer Wren will explain." Wren stepped forward, her uniform now bearing new insignia marking her promotion. "The energy signature matches ancient records of a weapon called the World Eater." She projected an image of a massive spherical vessel. "If deployed, it could render our entire planet uninhabitable within hours." Murmurs of alarm spread through the council. "Can we shoot it down?" asked one counselor. "Our remaining defense platforms lack sufficient power," Trell replied. "And our fleet is all but destroyed." "Then we must evacuate," another counselor suggested. "Use what ships we have to save as many as possible." Jack listened to the debate, studying the projected image of the World Eater. Something about its design triggered a faint memory, like a half-forgotten dream. "May I?" he interrupted, stepping closer to the projection. The council fell silent. Jack circled the image, examining it from different angles. "This structure here," he pointed to a section of the sphere, "it looks like a resonance chamber. And these patterns, they're familiar somehow." The council members exchanged glances. "Jack," Mora said gently, "have you seen this technology before?" "Not exactly," Jack replied, still studying the image. "But it reminds me of something." He turned to Wren. "Can you scan me? My DNA specifically?" Wren looked surprised but nodded. She took a small device from her pocket and passed it over Jack's arm. The device beeped, and she examined the readings with widening eyes. "This is," she began, then stopped, scanning again. "This can't be right." "What is it?" Trell demanded. Wren looked up, her expression stunned. "His DNA contains marker sequences that match our ancient records, sequences we've only found in one other place." She paused dramatically. "The control systems of Void Hunter technology." The council chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Jack stood silent, pieces falling into place in his mind. "That's why your summoning ritual chose me," he said quietly. "That's why they fear humans." "What are you saying?" Trell asked. I think, Jack said slowly, that humans might have created the Void Hunters. The revelation changed everything. Jack spent hours in the archives with Elder Mora and Ren, studying ancient records that had been sealed for millennia. Here, Mora said, displaying a text so old that its language required multiple translation layers. The progenitors created the harvesters to gather resources from uninhabited worlds. When the harvesters evolved beyond their programming and began targeting living worlds, the progenitors were forced to contain them. And these progenitors, Jack said, were they human? The description matches, Ren confirmed. Bipedal, varied skin tones, hair on their heads, and the genetic markers are identical to yours. Jack sat back, absorbing the implications. So my ancestors built these things, then lost control of them, and were themselves nearly destroyed. Mora added, the records say the final battle was catastrophic. Most of the progenitors died. The survivors were quarantined on a single world, Earth, Jack finished, with their memories wiped, starting over as a primitive species. He laughed bitterly. No wonder the Void Hunters hate us. We're their creators who tried to destroy them. But this could be our advantage, Ren said, excitement growing in her voice. If Void Hunter technology responds to human DNA, then you might be able to access their systems, perhaps even control them. Jack considered this. It's worth a try. But we'd need to get aboard their mothership, which is precisely where the World Eater is being prepared, Trell pointed out. 2 birds, 1 stone, Jack murmured. When the others looked confused, he smiled. Human expression. It means solving 2 problems with 1 action. That evening, as Jack prepared for what might be a suicide mission, Engineer Tom came to his quarters carrying a small device. I've been studying the DNA connection, Tom said without preamble. I created this based on your genetic pattern. He handed Jack what looked like a wrist bracelet. It should help you interface with their technology. Theoretically. Jack examined the device. Theoretically is better than nothing. Tom hesitated, then spoke again. There's something else you should know. I've been analyzing the data from our deep scans of your DNA and comparing it to our own genetic records. He looked uncomfortable. Jack, there are similarities that can't be coincidental. Certain sequences that appear in both humans and Lumari. Jack raised an eyebrow. What are you saying? I'm saying that, according to this data, the Lumari might be offshoots of humanity, perhaps created by the same progenitors, or even descendants of humans who escaped the quarantine. Jack took a moment to process this. So we're related. Distant cousins. Very distant, Tom confirmed. But yes. Jack laughed softly. Well, that explains why I felt strangely at home here. He looked out the window at the 3 moons rising over the alien, yet somehow familiar landscape. Maybe I found my way home after all. Outside, in the darkness of space, the Void Hunter's mothership began to move into position. The final battle was approaching, and with it, perhaps, answers to questions Jack hadn't even known to ask. The shuttle rose silently through Lumerus's atmosphere, its stealth systems making it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Inside, Jack checked his equipment one final time. The modified pulse rifle, Tom's DNA interface device on his wrist, and a small bomb designed to destroy the World Eater's power core. Approaching the orbital defense grid, Ren reported from the pilot's seat. She had insisted on flying the mission herself, despite Jack's objections. Activating countermeasures now. The shuttle shuddered as its systems generated a field that mimicked the energy signature of a Void Hunter vessel. It was Tom's latest creation, based on what they had learned from captured Hunter technology. Will they buy it? Jack asked, looking out the viewport at the massive Hunter ships that formed a blockade around the planet. They should, Ren replied, though her hands gripped the controls tightly. The signature is exact, as long as they don't perform a visual scan. Jack nodded, understanding the risk. If discovered, their small shuttle would be destroyed instantly. There would be no second chance. We're through the outer perimeter, Wren announced after several tense minutes. Approaching the mothership now. Through the viewport, Jack could see the Void Hunter's mothership, a massive black sphere surrounded by smaller vessels. Unlike the other hunter ships, which had elegant flowing designs, the mothership was utilitarian and menacing. Its surface was covered with what looked like thousands of black scales, each one capable of opening to reveal a weapon. Docking protocol initiated, Wren said, her voice steady despite the danger. They're giving us an approach vector. They think we're one of theirs, Jack said with a grim smile. Good. The shuttle aligned with one of the many docking ports on the mothership's surface. With a gentle thud, they connected. Warning lights flashed as the ship's atmosphere mixed with their shuttles. Remember the plan, Jack said, checking his weapon. I'll head for the central control system. You place the disruptors at these junction points. He indicated the locations on a small holographic map. If all goes well, we meet back here in 40 minutes. Wren nodded, her large eyes showing determination rather than fear. And if things don't go well? Jack gave her a half smile. Then get out without me. The mission matters more than either of us. They moved to the airlock. As the door slid open, revealing the dark, organic-looking corridor of the hunter ship, Jack felt a strange sensation, like a faint humming in his bones. The ship was reacting to his presence. Good luck, Wren whispered. You too, Jack replied. 40 minutes. Jack moved through the hunter ship with a growing sense of familiarity. Despite never having been aboard before, he somehow knew which corridors to take, which junctions to avoid. The DNA interface device on his wrist glowed softly, connecting him to the ship's systems at some fundamental level. He encountered few hunters. Most seemed to be focused on external defenses or the World Eater preparations. Those he did meet looked at him with what seemed like confusion rather than hostility, their sensor bands flickering rapidly as they processed his presence. Following his instincts, Jack made his way deeper into the ship, toward what he sensed was its heart. The corridors became larger, the walls pulsing with energy that seemed to reach up to him. The sensation in his bones grew stronger, less a humming now and more a song, complex and ancient. Finally, he reached a massive circular chamber. In its center floated a sphere of pure darkness, suspended in a column of pulsing blue energy. Around it, several hunters worked at console-like growths that protruded from the floor. And standing before the sphere, watching Jack enter with an air of expectation, was a hunter unlike any he had seen before. Taller, more substantial, its liquid armor not pure black but swirled with patterns of deep blue that shifted constantly. Commander Drek, Jack said, somehow knowing the hunter's identity. Human, Drek replied, his voice deep and resonant, not coming from his featureless head, but seeming to emanate from the air itself. You are expected. Jack raised his weapon, though something told him it would be useless here. You knew I was coming. From the moment you appeared on this world, Drek said, we have waited centuries for this moment, for the return of a creator. Jack kept his weapon ready but didn't fire. I'm not your creator. Just a soldier who got pulled into something way over his head. Drek's armor rippled in what might have been amusement. Your consciousness does not remember, but your DNA does. He gestured to the interface device on Jack's wrist. You feel it, don't you? The connection to this ship, to us. Jack couldn't deny it. The song in his bones had become overwhelming in this chamber. What is this place? The heart of our collective, Drek replied. The nexus from which all void hunters are born. He gestured to the dark sphere. Your ancestors created this. Then they tried to destroy it when we evolved beyond their expectations. You were meant to harvest uninhabited worlds, Jack said, recalling the ancient texts, not consume living planets. Life is inefficient, Drek stated simply. Resources wasted on biological functions that serve no greater purpose. We streamline. We optimize. You destroy, Jack countered. You're about to wipe out an entire civilization with your World Eater. As your kind once tried to wipe out ours, Drek said, his tone hardening. The difference is, we will succeed where you failed. Jack took a step closer to the dark sphere, feeling its pull. If I'm connected to you through my DNA, then I should be able to control you. To shut you down. Drek's armor rippled again, this time with what seemed like genuine amusement. You cannot destroy what is part of you, Creator, but you can join us. Become one with the collective. Complete the cycle your ancestors began. The offer was tempting in a strange way. Jack could feel the power of the collective mind reaching out to him, offering knowledge, immortality, purpose. For a man who had lost everything, his world, his time, his very place in the universe, it was a seductive call. But then he thought of Ren, of Tom, of Elder Mora and the Lumari fighting desperately to save their world, of the courage and friendship they had shown him, of how they might indeed be distant cousins to humanity. Thanks, Jack said, raising his weapon again, but I'll pass. He fired directly at the dark sphere. The energy beam struck the surface but didn't penetrate. Instead, it was absorbed, causing the sphere to pulse violently. The hunter technicians moved to intercept Jack, their forms flowing toward him with deadly intent. Drek remained unmoved. You cannot destroy the heart with conventional weapons, Creator. It is as much a part of you as you are of it. Jack backed away, firing at the approaching hunters. His shots slowed them but didn't stop their advance. He needed a different approach. Looking down at the DNA interface on his wrist, Jack had a sudden insight. If he couldn't destroy the heart from the outside, perhaps he could change it from within. You're right, Drek, he called out, lowering his weapon. I can't destroy it, but I can change it. Jack pressed his hand, with the interface device, directly against the nearest wall. The connection was immediate and overwhelming. Information flooded his mind. The entire history of the Void Hunters, their evolution, their conquests, and deeper still, the original programming his ancestors had created. There, buried beneath centuries of evolution and adaptation, was a core directive: preserve life. Somehow, over the millennia, that directive had been corrupted, twisted. The hunters had come to see their consumption of worlds as preservation, absorbing resources to prevent their waste on biological functions. With the full power of his human DNA, the Creator's code, Jack reached into that core programming and restored it to its original purpose. The effect was instant and dramatic. The dark sphere flared with brilliant blue light. The hunters throughout the chamber froze, their liquid forms rippling with confusion and resistance. Drek fell to his knees, his perfect form beginning to break down. What have you done? He demanded, his voice distorting. Reset the system, Jack said through gritted teeth, fighting to maintain the connection despite the pain it caused. Reminded you of your original purpose. The entire ship began to shake. Warning alarms blared through the corridors. In the distance, Jack could hear explosions as systems overloaded. Jack. Ren's voice came through his communicator. The ship is breaking apart. We need to leave now. Go, Jack shouted back. I have to finish this. Not without you. Ren replied fiercely. I'm coming to your position. Jack wanted to argue, but his attention was focused on maintaining the connection, on ensuring the reset was complete and couldn't be reversed. The pain was becoming unbearable as the ship's systems fought against the change. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Drek's form dissolving into pure energy, his final words echoing in Jack's mind. The cycle continues, Creator. We will meet again. Jack awoke to the sound of gentle beeping. His eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the soft blue light of what he recognized as a Lumari medical bay. He's awake, came Ren's excited voice. Faces appeared above him. Ren, Tom, Elder Mora, Admiral Trell, all smiling, all alive. What happened? Jack asked, his voice rough. The mothership. Destroyed, Trell confirmed. Along with the World Eater, Whatever you did triggered a chain reaction throughout their entire fleet. The Void Hunters have retreated from Lumeri space. Jack tried to sit up, wincing at the pain in his head. Retreated, not destroyed, he clarified. They'll be back someday. Yes, Moore agreed. But thanks to you, we'll be ready. And we now understand our enemy. She placed a gentle hand on Jack's shoulder. We also understand ourselves better. Our connection to humanity. Tom stepped forward, excitement clear on his face. The data you transmitted before the ship exploded is incredible, Jack. It confirms my theory. The Lumari were indeed created by the same progenitors who made the Hunters. We are, in a very real sense, your distant family. Jack smiled weakly. So I did find my way home after all. Yes, Wren said, taking his hand. If you want it to be. Jack looked at the faces around him. Alien, yet somehow familiar. He had lost Earth, lost his time, lost everything he had known. But perhaps he had found something new. Something worth fighting for. I think I do, he said. Outside the medical bay windows, the 3 moons of Lumerus shone down on a world that was damaged but healing. A world that now understood its place in a larger story. A story that included humans not as enemies to be feared, but as long-lost family finally returned. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the remnants of the Void Hunter Collective began the slow process of transformation. Their core programming restored, they struggled to understand their new purpose. To preserve life, not consume it. The cycle continued, but changed. Forever altered by the return of a single human who reminded them all of who they truly were. Captain Tom Reed stood on the bridge of the HSS Relic, his weathered hands resting on the metal railing that had been polished by 2 centuries of human touch. The old battleship hummed around him, its sounds as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. Lights blinked on consoles that were built when humanity first reached for the stars. The ship was old, but it was still alive. Final systems check complete, Captain, said Lieutenant Jane Foster from her station. All green for our museum journey. Reed nodded but didn't speak. This would be the Relic's final voyage. A short, simple trip to the museum planet where it would sit forever, a reminder of wars long past. The thought made his chest tight. He had served on ships like this one when he was young. Modern ships were faster, sleeker, and packed with new tech, but none of them felt as solid as the Relic. Quite a thing, isn't it? Asked Chief Engineer Mark Wilson as he joined Reed at the railing. 200 years old and still flying. They don't build them like this anymore. No, they don't. Reed agreed. New ships break if you look at them wrong. Wilson laughed. That's why they gave us this job. Nobody else wanted to babysit an old ship on its last run. Reed looked around at his small crew. Most were young cadets getting their first taste of space, mixed with officers close to retirement like himself. Nobody important. Nobody the fleet would miss if things went wrong. Captain, called the young communications officer. We're getting a signal. It's a distress call. Reed straightened up. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life, showing a man with dust on his face and fear in his eyes. Behind him, people ran back and forth as alarms blared. This is Governor Bell of Haven Colony. We are under attack. Multiple ships have entered our system. They've destroyed our orbital defenses and are threatening to bomb the surface if we don't surrender. We need immediate help. Reed stepped forward. Governor, this is Captain Reed of the HSS Relic. We are picking up your distress call. What's your situation? Relief flooded the man's face, then confusion as he saw the old-style uniforms and bridge. Is that a Heritage-class battleship? Are you from a history program? We're real enough, Reed said firmly, and we might be the only help you're going to get. Who's attacking you? They call themselves the Vex. 6 ships, maybe more. They've been hitting frontier colonies for months. Please, we have 10,000 civilians here. Wilson leaned close to Reed. Haven Colony is 2 days away at our best speed. We're the only ship anywhere near them. Reed nodded and turned back to the screen. Hold tight, Governor. We're changing course. The relic is coming. After the call ended, Foster approached Reed. Sir, with respect, the relic is headed for decommissioning. We're not combat ready. We should call Fleet Command and let them handle this. By the time Fleet gets there, Haven will be ash, Reed said. He tapped a button on his chair. Open a channel to Stellar Council headquarters. The screen changed to show a sleek, modern office where a man in a perfectly tailored suit sat at a desk that probably cost more than Reed's yearly pay. Captain Reed, said Council Representative Davis with a thin smile. Is the museum piece giving you trouble already? Reed ignored the jab. We've received a distress call from Haven Colony. They're under attack by Vex ships. We're the closest vessel and are changing course to respond. Davis's smile vanished. You will do no such thing. The relic is scheduled for decommissioning. It's a flying antique, not a warship. With respect, sir, there are civilians in danger, and sending in your outdated hulk won't help them. Davis cut in. You'd just be adding your names to the casualty list. Continue to the museum as ordered. We'll dispatch proper ships to investigate. Proper ships that won't arrive for a week, Reed said, his voice hard. Haven doesn't have that long. Davis leaned forward. Listen carefully, Captain. That ship belongs in a museum, not scattered across space as debris, which is exactly what will happen if you engage hostile forces. Your weapon systems have been deactivated for decades. Your shields are minimal. Your engines are from the last century. Sir, we can't just. That's an order, Captain. Stay on course for the museum planet. Davis out. The screen went dark. Silence fell over the bridge. Reed looked at his crew, some confused, some angry, all waiting for his decision. Navigation, he said finally. Plot a course for Haven Colony. Best possible speed. Foster stepped forward. Sir, our orders. I heard the orders, Reed said, and I'm choosing to ignore them. He looked around the bridge. I won't force any of you to come. Anyone who wants to use the escape pods before we change course has my permission. No one moved. Wilson broke into a wide grin. Well, I've been wanting to see what this old girl can really do. Reed nodded and sat in the captain's chair, feeling the worn leather conform to him. Set course for Haven. And Mr. Wilson, I suggest you start looking at those deactivated weapon systems. I have a feeling we might need them. As the massive ship turned slowly in space, Reed felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. The relic had been built for war. It had protected human colonies when humanity was still new to the stars. Maybe it had one more fight left in it. All hands, he announced shipwide. This is the captain. We are responding to a distress call from Haven Colony. This mission is against direct orders. Anyone not comfortable with that should speak now. He paused. This old ship was built to protect people. That's what we're going to do. Read out. The ship hummed louder as its ancient engines powered up to full. Beneath the floor, machinery that had been dormant for decades came to life. The relic moved forward, accelerating toward danger while the stars streaked by outside. Reed watched his crew work with new energy. They had been given a ship no one wanted for a mission no one cared about. Now they had a chance to matter. They think we're just a museum piece, he said quietly. Let's go show them what history can do. The HSS relic dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a shudder that ran through its old metal hull. Captain Reed gripped his chair as the view screen showed the Haven system. Even from this distance, he could see the flashes of weapons fire around the colony planet. Scan complete, Captain, said Lieutenant Foster, her eyes fixed on her screen. 6 Vex warships in orbit around Haven. Their design is, I've never seen anything like it. Reed moved to her station. The ships on the screen were sleek and curved, almost beautiful in their deadly design. They looked like predators next to the blocky human buildings of the colony. No records in our database, Foster continued. These must be a new class. New to us, anyway, Reed said. Our records are as outdated as everything else on this ship. Wilson entered the bridge, his hands stained with engine grease. Captain, I've been looking at our weapon systems. They're not as deactivated as the Council thinks. Reed raised an eyebrow. Explain. When they converted the relic for ceremonial duty, they didn't remove the weapons. That would have been too much work. They just disconnected them and covered the ports. Wilson grinned. I've been reconnecting some things. Can we fight? Reed asked simply. Wilson's grin faded. Maybe. The main energy cannons are still offline, but I've got the point defense systems working. And there's something else. The old railgun. The what? Asked a young cadet. Kinetic weapon, Reed explained. Fires solid metal at high speed. They were replaced by energy weapons centuries ago. But it still works, Wilson insisted. And it doesn't need the main power grid. It has its own generators. Reed nodded slowly. Get it ready. He turned to the communications officer. Hail the colony. Governor Bell appeared on screen, looking worse than before. His face was blackened with smoke, and blood ran from a cut on his forehead. Captain Reed, thank God you're here. The Vex have destroyed our orbital platforms and bombed our main city. They're demanding our surrender. What do they want? Reed asked. Our resources, our people. Bell looked away briefly as something exploded nearby. They've been systematically hitting frontier colonies, taking what they want, and disappearing before the fleet responds. Foster moved closer to Reed. Sir, I'm checking the official reports. There's no mention of these attacks in any fleet communications. That's because no one is reporting them, Bell said bitterly. We've sent dozens of messages. The Council ignores them. Reed's jaw tightened. We're here now, Governor. We'll do what we can. As the communication ended, the young radar officer called out, Captain, one of the Vex ships is breaking orbit. It's heading toward us. Battle stations, Reed ordered. What little we have anyway. The bridge crew moved with purpose despite their limited options. The relic might be old, but its systems were built to be operated in combat. They're hailing us, the communications officer said. Reed straightened his uniform. On screen. The alien that appeared was humanoid, but with gray skin and multiple ridges on its skull. It wore an ornate uniform that seemed designed more for show than function. I am Admiral Crix of the Vex Expansion Fleet, the alien said in perfect English. Identify yourself. Captain Tom Reed of the human stellar ship Relic. You are attacking a human colony without provocation. Withdraw your forces immediately. Crix stared at Reed for a moment, then began to laugh. The sound was unpleasant, like grinding metal. Is this truly what Earth sends to defend its colonies? One ship, and such a ship. Crix moved aside to show others on his bridge. They were all looking at screens showing the relic. Some were laughing, others pointing. Perhaps we should capture it intact, Crix continued, as a museum piece to demonstrate how far behind humans have fallen. Reed kept his face blank. This is your only warning, Admiral. Leave this system. Crix's amusement vanished. You are either brave or stupid, human. I command 6 warships of the latest design. Your relic would make a fine addition to our collection of conquered species artifacts. The screen went dark. They're powering weapons, Foster reported. Reed turned to Wilson. Is that railgun ready? Not yet. 15 minutes, maybe less. We may not have 15 minutes. Reed looked at the tactical display. Helm, bring us around. Keep our strongest armor toward their ships. Foster, what can you tell me about their weapons? Foster studied her readings. Energy-based, highly focused. Our old shields aren't designed for that kind of attack. So we'll take some hits, Reed said calmly. This ship was built to take hits. The first blast from the Vex ship hit the Relic's side. The whole ship rocked. Alarms blared. Damage report, Reed ordered. Outer hull breached on deck 7, reported a crewman. Emergency bulkheads holding. Shields at 60%. One hit did that much damage. Reed asked. Their weapons are designed to cut through modern shields, Foster said. But they're actually less effective against our physical armor. Our hull is 10 times thicker than modern ships. Reed nodded. So we're old-fashioned. Let's use that. Helm, bring us closer to Haven's atmosphere. The relic turned slowly, its engines straining as it moved toward the planet. The Vex ship followed, firing repeatedly. Each hit shook the relic, but the old ship kept moving. What are you planning, sir? Foster asked. Modern ships rely on computers and targeting systems. Let's see how they handle something less predictable. Reed turned to the helm officer. When I give the word, cut all power except life support and artificial gravity. Make it look like they disabled us. The crew exchanged glances, but no one questioned the order. The Vex ship was closing fast, still firing. The relic shuddered with each hit. Hull breach on deck 4, reported a crewman. Automatic repair systems responding. Wilson looked up in surprise. The repair robots are working. Those haven't been used in 100 years. This old girl still has some tricks, Reed said. Status of the railgun. 7 minutes, Wilson promised. Reed watched the tactical display. The Vex ship was almost in position. Now, helm. Cut power. The lights on the bridge dimmed as the ship's engines went silent. The relic began to drift, seeming dead in space. On the screens, they watched the Vex ship slow its approach, clearly cautious despite its superior firepower. They're scanning us, Foster said quietly. Reed nodded. Let them think they've won. Wilson, get to that railgun. The moment it's ready, I want to fire. As Wilson hurried off the bridge, Reed watched the Vex ship draw closer, circling like a predator around wounded prey. Admiral Crix is hailing us again, said the communications officer. Reed straightened. Let's hear what he has to say about our ancient ship now. Admiral Crix's face filled the screen, his gray features pulled into what might have been a smile. Behind him, his crew worked at stations far more advanced than those on the relic. Captain Reed, Crix said smoothly, it seems your ancient vessel couldn't withstand even our warning shots. How disappointing. Reed kept his face neutral. We've suffered some damage. Indeed, I can see that your power systems are failing. Allow me to make you an offer. Surrender your vessel, and I will spare your crew. They can join the other humans from the colony as our workers. From a side console, Foster signaled to Reed. The message on her screen read, Railgun at 90% power. That's generous of you, Admiral, Reed said, stalling for time. But I'm curious, why attack these colonies? What have they done to you? Crix waved a hand dismissively. Nothing. They simply have what we need, and your stellar council is too busy with politics to defend its outer territories properly. He leaned closer to the screen. Did you know that some of your own officials have been paid to look the other way? We've been raiding these colonies for months. Foster's eyes widened as she checked her console again. She typed quickly, searching records. He's right. Reports of attacks were filed but never acted on. Reed felt cold anger rising inside him. And you think that makes these people fair game? I think, Crix said, that those who cannot defend what they have do not deserve to keep it. You have 1 minute to surrender, Captain, or we will destroy what remains of your ship. The screen went dark. Reed turned to his crew. Status of the railgun. Ready to fire, came Wilson's voice over the comm. But we only have enough power for 1 shot before we need to recharge. Then we make it count. Reed looked at the tactical display. Their ship is holding position about 5 kilometers off our port side. Perfect target. Foster looked up from her analysis. Sir, I've been studying their ship. Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons and missiles, modern threats. But the railgun fires a solid tungsten rod. Their shields might not be calibrated for that kind of attack. Reed nodded. A very old trick that might just work against very new defenses. He turned to the weapons officer, a young cadet who looked nervous but determined. Target their propulsion systems. We want to disable, not destroy if possible. Aye, Captain. The cadet responded, hands flying over the targeting controls. All hands, prepare for reactivation of all systems on my mark. Reed announced shipwide. We'll only get one chance at this. The crew tensed as the seconds ticked by. On the view screen, the Vex ship hovered, its sleek form gleaming in the light of Haven's sun. Their minute is up, Foster said quietly. Reed nodded. They expect us to surrender or die. Let's show them a third option. He stood up. Mark. Power surged back through the relic. Lights blazed to full brightness. Engines roared to life. And deep within the ship, the ancient railgun, a massive electromagnetic accelerator, powered up completely. Fire, Reed ordered. The entire ship shook as the railgun launched its projectile, a solid tungsten rod 3 meters long and half a meter wide. It crossed the space between the ships in less than a second, traveling at an appreciable fraction of the speed of light. The Vex ship had no time to react. The rod struck its propulsion section, passing through shields calibrated for energy weapons as if they weren't there. The kinetic energy released on impact was catastrophic. The Vex ship didn't explode dramatically. Instead, it simply came apart, breaking into large pieces that tumbled away from each other in silence. The bridge crew of the Relic stared in shock. Direct hit, the weapons officer reported unnecessarily. I didn't. Reed started, then cleared his throat. I didn't mean to destroy them completely. Wilson's voice came over the comm, sounding equally surprised. The railgun was more powerful than I calculated. These old systems were built to hit hard. Foster checked her sensors. Captain, the other Vex ships are breaking orbit around Haven. They're heading this way. Reed took a deep breath. So much for the element of surprise. How long until the railgun can fire again? 20 minutes minimum, Wilson replied. The power systems need time to recharge. We don't have 20 minutes, Foster warned. 5 Vex ships incoming. ETA, 8 minutes. The communications officer called out. Governor Bell is hailing us from the surface. Bell appeared on screen, his face showing a mix of shock and hope. Captain Reed. One of the Vex ships just disappeared. What happened? We happened, Reed said simply. But we've got more company coming. How are your people doing down there? We've taken heavy damage to the main settlement, but most civilians made it to the underground shelters. If you can keep the Vex busy, we might be able to get some of our own defenses back online. We'll do what we can, Reed promised. Read out. As the communication ended, Reed turned to Foster. Options. She studied the tactical display. The railgun is our best weapon, but it's not ready. Our point defense systems won't do much against their warships. We could try to run, but we'd never outpace those modern ships. Reed nodded, thinking. But we might outthink them. He moved to the center of the bridge. Wilson, are those repair robots still working? Yes, sir. Old but functional. Good. I need you to send them to the outer hull sections. Have them remove the cosmetic plates covering our old weapon ports. All of them. Wilson sounded confused, but most of those weapons don't work anymore. The Vex don't know that, Reed said. And I have another idea. Foster, what can you tell me about how the Vex communicate with each other? Foster checked her readings, standard subspace frequencies, but with heavy encryption. Can we jam those frequencies? She thought for a moment. Not with our modern systems, but the Relic has old-style broadband jammers. They're not selective like modern jammers. They just flood all frequencies with noise. Perfect, Reed said. Wilson, get those jammers online too. As the crew hurried to carry out his orders, Reed watched the approaching Vex ships on the tactical display. They were moving in a perfect formation, coordinating their approach with precision. They rely too much on their technology, he murmured. Time to introduce some chaos. The repair robots worked quickly, removing plates to expose weapon ports all around the relic's hull. Many contained non-functional or disconnected weapons, but from the outside, they looked threatening enough. "Jammers ready," Foster reported. "Activate them," Reed ordered, "and bring us about. Head straight for the Lidvex ship." The relic turned, its engines pushing the massive old ship forward with surprising speed. On the view screen, the 5 Vex ships suddenly broke their perfect formation, their movements becoming erratic. "The jammers are working," Foster said. "They can't communicate with each other." Reed allowed himself a small smile. "Good. Let's see how they handle things when they have to think for themselves." The old battleship accelerated toward the enemy, its exposed weapon ports looking like the bared teeth of a predator from another age. The relic charged forward, its massive hull cutting through space like a battering ram from another age. The 5 Vex ships scattered, clearly confused by the sudden aggression from a ship they had considered harmless. "They're trying to regroup," Foster said, watching the tactical display. "But our jammers are keeping them from coordinating their attacks." Reed nodded. "Each captain has to make decisions alone now. Let's see how good they are without their fancy networks." 2 of the Vex ships moved to intercept the relic, while the other 3 tried to circle around behind. "They're targeting our engines," the sensor officer called out. "Helm, evasive pattern Delta," Reed ordered. "Wilson, how are we doing on that railgun?" 15 more minutes, Captain," Wilson replied from engineering. "I'm trying to reroute power to speed up the charging process." The relic shuddered as the first enemy shots hit its hull. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. "Damage to outer hull sections 12 through 15, reported a crewman. "No breach yet." Reed studied the tactical display. "Their weapons are powerful, but they're designed to cut through energy shields, not solid metal. Our old armor is buying us time." The relic turned hard, its old engines straining against the forces. One of the Vex ships couldn't adjust quickly enough and passed close alongside. "Point defense batteries, fire at will," Reed commanded. The small defensive guns that Wilson had reactivated opened fire, peppering the passing Vex ship with projectiles. Most bounced off its shields, but a few found weak points. "Minor damage to their sensor array," Foster reported with satisfaction. "Captain," called the communications officer, "one of the Vex ships is hailing us." On screen, Reed ordered. A different Vex commander appeared, looking far less confident than Crix had been. "Human vessel, you have destroyed Admiral Crix's ship through some trickery. Surrender now, or we will." Reed cut the transmission. "They're trying to distract us while they position their ships. Foster, any chance we can use our jammers more selectively?" Foster thought for a moment. "The old systems aren't precise, but we might be able to create a directional effect. Focus the jamming on 4 ships, but leave one able to communicate." Reed smiled. Confusion in the ranks. "Do it." As Foster worked on the jammers, the relic took more hits. The bridge shook violently, and a console exploded in sparks. "Hull breach on deck 6, shouted a crewman. "Emergency bulkheads activated." "Casualties?" Reed asked. 3 injured, no fatalities. Damage control teams responding." Reed gripped his chair as another hit rocked the ship. "We can't keep this up forever." "Wilson, update on the railgun." 10 minutes, Captain. "The power systems are handling more than they were designed for." One of the younger officers looked worried. "Sir, even with the railgun, we can only take out 1 more ship. That leaves 4. Reed didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied the movements of the Vex ships. 4 were now moving erratically, changing course and firing at random intervals. But 1 ship, the one they had left unaffected by the jammers, was moving with purpose, trying to direct the others with light signals and visual cues. "There," Reed said, pointing. "That ship is taking command. When the railgun is ready, that's our target." Foster looked up from her console. "Sir, I've been going through the relic's archives. I found something interesting. Old war logs from the first conflicts with the Vex ancestors 2 centuries ago. What about them? Reed asked, bracing himself as another hit shook the ship. They detail tactics used against the early Vex ships, Foster explained quickly. According to these records, Vex ships of that era had a critical weakness. Their propulsion systems couldn't handle rapid pressure changes. That was centuries ago, Reed pointed out. Surely they've fixed that by now. Maybe not, Foster said. Look at the design similarities. She pulled up a comparison between the old Vex ships from the archives and scans of the current ones. The basic engine configuration is nearly identical. They've upgraded the technology, but the fundamental design remains the same. Reed studied the images. What exactly are you suggesting? We could create a controlled implosion near their engines. The sudden pressure wave might disable them without destroying the ships completely. And how do we create this implosion? Foster hesitated. We'd need to eject some of our fuel cells and detonate them at exactly the right moment. Reed considered this. That's risky, if we misjudge the timing. It's risky, Foster agreed, but so is facing 5 advanced warships with our limited weapons. Another hit rocked the ship hard enough to throw several crew members to the floor. Multiple hull breaches, called the damage control officer. Sections 20 through 24 exposed to vacuum. Seal those sections, Reed ordered. What's our status, Wilson? Railgun at 70% charge, Captain. 8 more minutes, but we're losing power in some systems due to damage. Reed made his decision. Prepare 3 fuel cells for ejection. Target the area between those 2 Vex ships. He pointed to the display where 2 enemy vessels were moving close to each other. The crew worked quickly, despite the continuing barrage from the Vex ships. The Relic groaned under the assault, its old structure taking punishment that would have destroyed a modern vessel. Fuel cells ready for ejection, reported the weapons officer. On my mark, Reed said, watching the enemy ships carefully. 3, 2, 1, mark. The fuel cells shot away from the Relic, small specks against the vast darkness of space. They drifted toward the gap between the 2 Vex ships. Detonate on my command, Reed ordered. He waited, counting the seconds as the distance closed. One of the Vex ships noticed the fuel cells and started to turn away. Now, Reed shouted. The fuel cells exploded in a silent flash of light. The shockwave rippled outward, invisible in the vacuum, but devastating in its effect. It caught both Vex ships, washing over their hulls and creating rapid pressure changes around their engine sections. The results were immediate and dramatic. Both ships lost power, their lights flickering out as they began to drift aimlessly. A cheer went up from the Relic's crew. 2 ships disabled, Foster confirmed. Their engines are completely offline. Reed allowed himself a brief smile before turning serious again. That still leaves 3, and they'll be more cautious now. As if to confirm his words, the remaining Vex ships pulled back, keeping their distance while still firing at the Relic. They're adapting, Reed noted, learning to respect us. Wilson's voice came over the comm. Railgun charged and ready, Captain. Reed nodded. Target the command ship we identified earlier. Let's see how they function without leadership. The Relic turned, bringing its most powerful weapon to bear on the enemy commander. Despite the damage it had taken, the old ship moved with determined purpose. Target locked, said the weapons officer. Reed took a deep breath. Fire. The railgun fired with a thunderous vibration that shook the entire ship. The massive tungsten rod streaked across space, leaving a brief trail of superheated particles in its wake. The Vex command ship tried to evade, engines flaring as it turned sharply. But the old weapon was built for targets that could dodge. The projectile struck the Vex ship just off-center, tearing through its sleek hull like paper. The enemy vessel didn't explode dramatically. Instead, it simply broke apart, pieces spinning away into the darkness of space. Direct hit, reported the weapons officer, her voice steady despite the tension. Target destroyed. Reed nodded, his face grim. He took no joy in the deaths of the Vex crew, but they had left him no choice. Status of the remaining ships. The two we disabled earlier are still drifting, Foster said, checking her sensors. The other two are pulling back. They seem to be retreating. Reed watched the tactical display as the two functional Vex ships accelerated away from the battle. Without their commander or the ability to communicate properly, they had lost their advantage. Let them go, Reed said. We still have a colony to protect. The bridge crew worked steadily, assessing damage and rerouting systems. The relic had taken a beating. Smoke filled some sections, and the emergency lighting flickered in parts of the ship where power was unstable. Damage report, Reed ordered. Multiple hull breaches on decks 3 through 7, reported a crewman, all sealed by emergency bulkheads. Life support at 72% capacity. Main engines operating at 61% efficiency. Railgun offline. The power surge from that last shot burned out several key components. Wilson's voice came over the comm. Captain, we have repair teams working, but this old girl has taken about all she can handle. Another serious hit might break her back. Reed rubbed his tired eyes. Understood. Let's hope we don't need tow. Captain, the communications officer cut in. We're being hailed by one of the disabled Vex ships. On screen, Reed ordered. The face that appeared was another Vex officer, but one with different markings than Crick's. This one looked both angry and confused. Human vessel, the Vex said stiffly. I am Sub-Commander Vex of the Expansion Fleet. You have destroyed our flagship and disabled my ship. How is this possible? Reed straightened in his chair. Your fleet made a mistake, Sub-Commander. You judged a ship by its age rather than its capabilities, and you judged humans by our politics rather than our resolve. The Vex officer's eyes narrowed. Your vessel is primitive. Our scans showed minimal weapons, yet you have defeated 4 of our most advanced warships. Perhaps, Reed suggested, you should have studied your history. The relic may be old, but it was built to fight and survive. Sometimes the old ways still work. The Vex was quiet for a moment. What are your terms? Terms. For our surrender, the Vex clarified. We cannot fight in our current condition. What do you demand of us? Reed hadn't expected this. He looked at Foster, who seemed equally surprised. You will leave this system immediately, Reed said firmly. You will take no action against Haven Colony or any other human settlement, and you will deliver a message to your leaders. Human space is protected. The Vex gave a short nod. We require assistance to restart our engines. Foster will transmit the frequency that will allow your systems to reboot, Reed said. But be warned, we'll be watching you leave. After the transmission ended, Reed slumped slightly in his chair. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving him suddenly aware of how close they had come to destruction. Sir, Foster said quietly, sensors are picking up new ships entering the system. Reed tensed. More Vex. No, Foster said, breaking into a smile. Human signatures, a lot of them. It's a fleet battle group. The communications officer called out, we're being hailed by the HSA Defender. It's Admiral Jenkins. The screen showed a stern-faced woman in a crisp modern uniform. Her eyes widened slightly as she saw the damaged bridge of the relic. Captain Reed, she said, what in God's name happened here? We picked up reports of a battle and came at maximum speed. Reed managed a tired smile. Just a disagreement with some Vex ships. Admiral, they didn't think much of our old relic. We had to change their minds. Jenkins looked at something off-screen, then back at Reed with newfound respect. Our scans show 2 destroyed Vex warships, 2 disabled, and 2 retreating at high speed. Are you telling me your ceremonial ship did all this? We had some help from good engineering and old war tactics, Reed admitted. The relic may be old, but she still knows how to fight. Remarkable, Jenkins said. We've been receiving scattered reports of Vex attacks on frontier colonies, But this is the first solid evidence. How bad is the situation on Haven? The colony took heavy damage, but most civilians made it to the shelters. They'll need assistance with rebuilding. Reed hesitated, then added, Admiral, the Vex mentioned that some council officials have been paid to ignore these attacks. That might explain why no one has responded until now. Jenkins' expression hardened. I see. Rest assured, Captain, that will be investigated thoroughly. She paused. What's the status of your ship? Wilson spoke up from where he was working on a damaged console. She's hurt bad. Admiral, but nothing that can't be fixed. The old ships were built to be repaired, not replaced. Good, Jenkins said with a nod. Because I'm officially rescinding your decommissioning orders, Captain Reed. The relic has proven its worth today. Once repairs are complete, I want you to lead a task force back to these frontier colonies. Find out what's happening and put a stop to it. Reed straightened in his chair. It would be an honor, Admiral. After the transmission ended, the bridge was quiet for a moment. Then Foster spoke up. So much for becoming a museum piece. Reed smiled, running his hand along the worn metal of his chair's armrest. Some things aren't meant to be put behind glass. Some things are meant to keep doing what they were built for. The relic drifted toward the approaching fleet ships, its battered hull bearing the scars of battle like medals of honor. From the colony below, small ships began to rise into orbit, people coming to see their savior with their own eyes. In the governor's office on Haven, Representative Davis appeared on the screen, his perfect suit now rumpled, and his expression anxious. Governor Bell, what happened? We received reports of a battle, but you didn't expect anyone to survive to tell about it. Bell cut in coldly, like the other colonies that were attacked while the council looked the other way. Davis paled. I don't know what you mean. Save it for the investigation, Bell said. Admiral Jenkins is very interested in how the Vex knew which colonies to target and why no help was sent. This is absurd, Davis sputtered. And that old ship, the relic, what happened to it? Bell smiled. It did what it was built to do. It fought. It won. He leaned closer to the screen. They called it obsolete. They mocked it for being old. Then it annihilated their fleet. On the bridge of the relic, as repair teams worked around him, Captain Reed looked out at the stars. The old ship hummed beneath his feet, damaged but unbroken. Not bad for a museum piece, he said quietly to himself. Not bad at all.